Hello. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dan McNamara. I'm the Vice President of the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council.
My name is George Scarpellis. I'm the President of the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council. We're going to say a few things, and then we're going to get this going. I just wanted to, first of all, welcome you all to the LA City Council District 4 Candidate Forum. I would like to thank all of you for coming, and all the neighborhood councils who sponsored or participated in the organizing of this event. Bel Air, Beverly Crest, Central Hollywood, Greater Toluca Lake, Greater Wilshire, Hollywood Hills West, Hollywood United, Los Feliz, and Silver Lake. I would also especially like to acknowledge several people who helped with the forum. Robin Allen, Elvina Beck, Roger Davis, Ellen Evans, Robin Greenberg, Max Kirkham and his excellent notes, and Misty LeGrand, who is fantastic. I am eternally grateful to the help and commitment of our secretary, Erin Penner, who does, not just for this and for everything she does for the City of Angels. Thanks to Anastasia Mann. Please, come on, don't bury the headline. Who hosted planning meetings and was instrumental in the genesis of this event. And finally, a huge thanks to Dan McNamara. We are so fortunate for his valued skill set and his tireless efforts to make today a reality. Neighborhood councils are here to engage, inform, and empower the community. Our job is to reach out and connect with the stakeholders, identify what is happening in the city, and convey the community's sentiments to our city leaders and our city agencies. Not only does this clarify the Byzantine nature of City Hall, but it engages and inspires civic participation, and it demands a responsive city government. Events like this one capture the essence of our mandate. I urge everyone to collaborate with your neighborhood council. We need your help to make our collective voice stronger. Engage, inform, and empower. Thank you, and good luck to the candidates. Dan.
And thank you, George. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you. In addition to the neighborhood councils, we've received additional support for this event from John Marshall High School, especially Gary Garcia and Brett Boyd and the JMHS Career Tech students who are here helping out on the Sunday of a long weekend, which makes me personally very proud to represent this school. The League of Women Voters Los Angeles, who's been advising us throughout this whole process. The Los Feliz Improvement Association, a wonderful community partner who supports and invests in this neighborhood. They have a table in the lobby, and if you're a Los Feliz local, I encourage you to stop by after and chat with them. Friends of the LA River, who helped us with environmental concerns, and all the stakeholders of Council District 4 who submitted their questions in advance, thank you for participating. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's moderator, KPCC Senior Political Reporter, Libby Denkman.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I just wanted to, first off, make mention that voting in person is changing in Los Angeles County. You may already know this, that our 4,800 or so traditional neighborhood polling places are likely going away. Most of them are going away in favor of consolidated vote centers. There's about 1,000 of them. They will start opening this Saturday, February 22nd. So spread the word. Not everybody is aware of this change. If you vote in person, you're probably voting somewhere new. You can also go to any vote center in the county now. And once you get to that vote center, you're going to be faced with some new technology inside. So all of that is information the county registrar has up on its website. Of course, we have it at kpcc.org or on our other news website, laist.com. It's just a really huge change. If you do have neighbors or maybe older folks that you know that might not be listening to the advertising that's been going on, let them know, because we don't want folks to show up on election day at their old polling place and not know where to vote. So without further ado, I'm going to start introducing the candidates for tonight's forum. Realtor and Neighborhood Council volunteer, Susan Collins. Writer and women's advocate, Sarah Kate Levy. District 4 LA City Council member, David Rue. And homelessness nonprofit leader, Nithya Raman. And I want to make mention that we do have a fifth candidate, a write-in candidate, who has joined us in the audience today. His name is Eric Christie, and I will be reading a statement from him after the opening statements from the candidates. So a little bit about our rules. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for their opening statement. Earlier today, we held a random drawing to determine candidate speaking order, and that will rotate with each question. The 20 questions I'll be asking this afternoon come from the community. This forum's organizers gathered input from stakeholders and community members. 16 questions were pre-selected from the most common submissions. And we also have 2 questions today that will be asked by our John Marshall High School student hosts. 2 of the questions today will be asked by you, the audience, right now. You can submit questions to the League of Women Voters volunteers who are here. They will vet those questions. We have the ability to collect cards. If you hold up your card and try to find a volunteer, or if you want to go find the League of Women Voters folks, I'm looking right now, is the League of Women Voters in the back here? If you could raise your hand and kind of wave your hand, or who's the best person to ask a question. We've got folks with cards in the air. So League of Women Voters waving in the back there, if you want to get your submission in, and we will have 2 of those questions added on to the end of the program. So this is a forum, not a debate, and candidates are discouraged from directly referencing each other. They will have 60 seconds to answer about half of the questions. The other half were assigned a 45-second response in the interest of time. If someone on stage does directly reference another candidate, that second candidate will get an extra 30-second rebuttal. The 30 seconds may be added on to their question response, depending on where we are in the order. If they've already gone, then they'll get an extra 30. If a candidate has been unclear in an answer, they may be asked a 15-second follow-up, and all of this is at the discretion of the moderator, me. I can also adjust the allotted time for any questions based on how quickly the program is moving along and our time constraints. Each candidate will get a 90-second closing statement as well to wrap things up. And folks, I know there was some cheering earlier. I'm really asking folks to refrain from clapping or booing or anything like that, just because we have so many questions. We really want to get to everything, and we want to be respectful and let everybody hear what's going on. And let's keep it clean from the candidate perspective as well. No profane behavior, no disruptive behavior, everybody. If there is disruptive behavior in the hall, we do have some Los Angeles police presence, and I will try to do a warning, but I don't want anybody to have to be removed. But we're trying to keep everything moving along. Now that the rules are out of the way, we can start with opening statements. We're going to have 60 seconds per candidate, and we're starting with Susan Collins. Ms. Collins.
Do I stand or?
You can take that way. Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Susan Collins, and I'd just like to make certain that everyone knows that I am a write-in candidate for this election process. And what that means is that when you vote for City Council, you will not see my name on the ballot. You will have to go to the write-in section and either write in, you'll have to select write-in candidate, and then either write in or type in Susan Collins as your choice for City Council in Los Angeles District 4. I have a 7-point plan to address the homelessness crisis that addresses the root causes of homelessness by providing services to people that need it, but also as a priority ensures that the surrounding community's safety and security is restored. I want to invest in people, not in property. I want to ensure that your representation represents you and not special interests. I want to make sure that our streets are clean, free from needles and garbage. And I want to empower you by implementing community outreach programs that
Thank you, Ms. Collins. We have timers right there from the League of Women Voters who will be holding up paddles and a 15-second warning. Should have said that ahead of time. Thank you for respecting the time. And that's Penny Summers and Jay Douglas from the League of Women Voters. Thanks, guys. Now, Sarah Kate Levy has opening statement. 60 seconds.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kate Levy, and I'm running for this seat because when I moved to this city 20 years ago after graduating from Yale, I found a really cheap apartment. And that apartment allowed me to stay here and put down roots. And 20 years later, I'm a WGA screenwriter. I just stepped down as president of the National Women's Political Caucus, LA Metro, and I'm a mom of 4 kids, 2 of whom are here somewhere. And I'm a really concerned citizen. I see too many families in this city, one crisis away from rock bottom. I see too many people dying in our streets. I see too many trees dying with no plan to replace them, and I will fight to change that. We can have affordable housing where we live and work. We can have safe streets. We can have parks and green space in every neighborhood. And I hope after this conversation today, we will take you with us on our movement for change. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rue.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Rue, and I am your council member. And 4.5 years ago, I ran as the outsider, as the reformer, as the underdog candidate where nobody gave me a chance to win. But because of your support, I did win. And together, we've been working to create transparency in City Hall, to start rebuilding trust and building a better Los Angeles for all future Angelinos. But today, we face the crisis of our time, and that is homelessness. And homelessness, there is no one person or one solution that's going to solve homelessness. It's going to take all of us, community leaders, business leaders, elected officials from all levels of government working together. And that's what I've done in the past 4.5 years, working all across Council District 4 with all communities to solve all of our challenges. And that's why I'm seeking re-election and for your support, because I want to build on that progress that we have built. Thank you.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nithya. I'm the mother of twin preschoolers. I'm an urban planner by training. I have a master's in urban planning from MIT, and I've spent most of my career working on urban poverty issues, both in India with slum dwellers and a lot of work on homelessness in Los Angeles. My frustrations with City Hall's inaction on homelessness is what led me to run today. And the message of my campaign has inspired so much support. And today, I just want to say we've had hundreds of volunteers coming out and volunteering and knocking doors for us. We've had so many people calling and text banking. And I just want to invite you all today to join us, because I know that together we can build a more just, a more sustainable, and a more beautiful Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I have a message from the write-in candidate, Eric Christie, who's in the audience but chose not to participate today. And Mr. Christie says, "This message is from Eric Christie. Thank you to the forum for reading my statement, and thank you to the responsible voters of the 4th District for attending tonight. I won't be participating in the forum as a speaker, but I am attending as a spectator. I have a 3-minute clip I want everyone to see by typing my name into the search box on YouTube. And I just want to spell Mr. Christie's name. It's Eric with a C and Christie. I'm the only Republican choice for the 4th District, possibly in the whole city, and the only chance for real improvement. I am part of the Walk Away movement, and I encourage everyone in the room to walk away tonight and vote for me, Eric Christie, for real change and improvement." Our first question, we will turn back to Ms. Collins, Susan Collins, for the first answer. We will rotate down the line. First question is on homelessness. Unsurprisingly, many of the proposed questions we received from our stakeholders were about the ongoing homelessness crisis in Los Angeles. If elected, what is your plan to immediately and effectively address homelessness in District 4 and citywide? And you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. I think one of the things that is missing from our current plans and why it's a failing plan right now is that we're not implementing plans of accountability. Los Angeles has to take a quick, hard look at our low barrier entry program. It's the primary reason that programs aren't working and people are pushing back against them. We absolutely must implement programs of accountability, and we have to ensure that every program that is implemented provides the surrounding communities with the restored safety, security, and cleanliness that they deserve. So a failure to do that is going to just continue to have what's called NIMBY pushback. Once we're able to provide communities with programs that restore their safety at the same time, we can provide programs that will be welcomed into the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Kate Levy, same question to you, 60 seconds. If elected, what is your plan to immediately and effectively address homelessness in the district and citywide?
Homelessness is absolutely a crisis in the city, and our city has failed to act as if that is the case. As many of you, I'm sure, know, homelessness in our district went up 53%, which was the largest spike in any part of the city. I believe that we could serve our homeless Angelenos so much better with safe parking and safe campsites, with bathrooms and showers and wraparound services on those sites. In that way, we could help people more effectively while also clearing our sidewalks. It is essential that our infrastructure be able to continue forward without damaging our small businesses, without making it difficult for us to traverse our streets. By supporting small business in this city, we will be able to generate more revenue for our budget and turn those dollars back into servicing homeless Angelenos, because that is how we pay for those services today. And I know we can use that money more effectively than sweeping people back and forth across the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rue.
Thank you. I've been working on homelessness for the past 16 years. And I encourage everyone to go to my City Hall website where you can learn about the three-prong approach, as well as my recent legislation for charter reform so the City of LA could have a FEMA-like response when it comes to homelessness. But as I stated before, homelessness didn't happen overnight, and there is no one person or one solution that's going to solve it. It's going to take all of us working together. And the past 4.5 years, that's what we have begun to do, all of us working together. That's why Council District 4 has 8 projects for homeless housing in our district alone, 3 completed with 5 underway, and that only occurred because we worked together to help identify, to get support, and to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
I worked at City Hall briefly in 2014 and looked at our city's response to homelessness at that time. I've also seen what it's like for so many residents in our neighborhood through the work I've done through the Sela Neighborhood Homeless Coalition, which I helped to found. What I have found across the board is a massive gap between the rhetoric of urgency that comes out of City Hall saying that this is the most important crisis and the reality that meets most homeless people when they are living on the streets. The reality is that when people become homeless in Los Angeles, it is almost impossible for them to get off the streets. I'm proposing that we transform how we provide services in Los Angeles, that we create neighborhood access centers where people have the opportunity to develop relationships of trust between caseworkers and people who are homeless that can actually get them off the streets. In fact, through the center we set up in Sela, we've actually housed 7 people just in the last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question on the same topic of homelessness. And the first answer will go to Sarah Kate Levy. While we pursue compassionate solutions to this crisis, how will you simultaneously address the valid public health and safety concerns of residents and businesses who are frustrated by debris-ridden streets and often feel endangered in their own communities? And you have 45 seconds for this question.
As I said, is that on still? There we go. As I said earlier, I believe safe parking and safe camping allow us to move people off our sidewalks and service them better. And when we do that, we can ensure that our sidewalks are clean and clear, and that restaurants can operate their outside cafes, or that there aren't trash dumps piling up in alleys. I talk to so many business owners in this city who say, I don't want to wake somebody up in front of my door in the morning. I feel terrible for those people, but it's making it horrible for me to operate my business. What can you do to help me? And I believe that by servicing people better in safe parking and safe camping, we can help those people and our small businesses thrive.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryu, same question, balancing public health and safety concerns of residents while addressing homelessness.
Thank you. And you know, this question is the question that you hear about all the time in the media, services versus sweeps. But what I'm saying is we need to reframe this question. It's not about services or sweeps, because the reality is we don't have enough services available or housing available for those who want to take advantage. And for sweeps, we don't have enough resources to do that as well. What we really need to do is reframe the question and make sure that we build enough housing that has services for our unhoused neighbors. The 3 prongs. First prong is building housing for our unhoused neighbors. 2, making sure that we actually prevent homelessness, stop the bleeding. And 3, changing mental health law so we can help those who are the sickest among us.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
Talk again about the incredible gap in what we're providing from the city on this issue. We have 9,000 people sleeping in their cars in the last homeless count in the city of Los Angeles alone. It's illegal, or it has been illegal, to sleep in your car in most of the city of Los Angeles. But in terms of legal, safe parking spots that have been provided, we've only provided 285 across the entire city. In the massive gap between the kinds of resources that are provided to people experiencing homelessness and what people are actually needs are, that's where the issue of homelessness means that residents are facing those issues. And I think we can do so much more in urgently providing those services so that we can actually help people get off the streets far more quickly.
Thank you. And Susan Collins.
So before we started to mandate that a lot of the nonprofits adhered to the low barrier entry program, there were several very successful nonprofit organizations that were addressing this program with fantastic success. Since we have now removed those fundings, those programs are no longer able to expand and to accept as many people as they once did. We need to restore funding. The city needs to start a partnership with these nonprofits so that we can start utilizing them again. And we also need to implement the California Compassionate Intervention Act, which should be on the ballot for November.
Thank you. Next question on the same topic, homelessness. And the first answer will go to Councilmember Ryu. If elected, how would you engage the service-resistant homeless population, many of whom struggle with addiction and mental health issues, or those in the transgender or immigrant communities who are hesitant to access services due to discriminatory factors? And you have 45 seconds for this.
Thank you. So when it comes to service resistance, that's where prong 3 kicks in with mental health reform. For those who are the sickest among us, the highest end utilizers going in and out of jail, in and out of our emergency rooms, probably have a life expectancy of 1 to 3 years. That's where we need to expand mental health law, expand the definition of gravely mentally ill so that we can help those, because I'm contending that they're committing slow suicide. But that's exactly where, and when you talk about language incapable or culturally incapable, that's where prong 2 kicks in, where we need to have homeless prevention. Too often we focus on the 36,000 homeless in the city of LA and 58,000 in the county of LA, when the real number we should be focused on are 721,000 people who are economically unstable in the county of Los Angeles.
Nithya Raman, same question to you, how to address service-resistant homeless population, also our transgender and immigrant community neighbors.
I want to talk a little bit about this term service resistant, because I think a lot of it comes from the way in which we've been offering services to people experiencing homelessness for so long. A recent city audit found that 75% of outreach connections made to people experiencing homelessness were actually happening during a sweep. That means when police was present, that means when their stuff was being thrown out. That is the worst time for someone to be able to accept services when they're offered. We can create evidence-based systems through which people can develop relationships with folks, whether they have mental illness or whether they have addiction. This is not rocket science. We've done it in neighborhoods in Los Angeles. They've done it in other cities. I know we can do it all over the city. We did it in my neighborhood, and it works.
Thank you. Susan Collins, next answer to you.
I am a supporter, as I've mentioned, of the California Compassionate Intervention Act. This act would allow us to use laws that are currently already on the books, not as a form of punishment for anyone, but rather as a means of motivation to get people that are service resistant into the care and into the services that they need. Our ability to ensure that these people get the services and care that they need also ensures that the surrounding communities have restored security and safety as well. It's way past time for Los Angeles to act on everybody's behalf. The homeless currently have a lot of advocates for them, but who's advocating for you? We want our communities to be restored as well.
Thank you. And Sarah Kate Levy.
I also want to talk about this idea of a service-resistant people. In other cities where there is sufficient housing, you can offer someone a key to an apartment and say, go there, and have your autonomy and your dignity. We can't do that here. We have nowhere to ask people to go, and we do not have enough people in the streets providing service because our service outreach teams are overstretched and our jobs are not filled. I believe that once we have offered service to everyone who will take it, we can then have a conversation about what to do with somebody who says, I don't want to go. And at that point, you can continue to touch people and touch people and touch people till they're ready to say, yes, I want to get clean, yes, I want to get help, and I am hopeful that the Trieste program rolling out this spring will prove that out.
Thank you. Next question is on housing and zoning, and the first answer will go to Nithya Raman. The recently failed California State Senate Bill 50 would have set statewide zoning regulations. There was significant opposition among Los Angeles lawmakers, but the conversation around zoning policy is likely to continue. What specific proposals of SB 50, if any, do you support? And what parts, if any, do you oppose? And this question will be a 60-second answer period.
I've actually laid out a plan to push for more housing in Los Angeles because I do think that more housing is incredibly necessary. SB 50, I thought was a very blunt tool to get us to the kind of housing that we need, but I think there is an incredible amount of need for affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles. And I think we have a very, we have a system right now in the state of California where there are increasingly more and more incentives, with or without SB 50, to actually build the kind of affordable housing that we need. In fact, many for-profit developers who have never been involved with affordable housing before are now moving into affordable housing because of changes in state law, because of changes in city laws that have come into place over the last few years. So I think we have an incredibly fertile ground to push for filling the gap of the 500,000 affordable housing units that we so desperately need.
And I'm just going to ask for a 15-second extra because the question askers were really looking for a specific SB 50 proposal. 15 seconds. Do you have parts of SB 50 that you supported, parts that you opposed, any specifics? 15 seconds.
Yeah, and I in my housing and homelessness plan, I talk about increasing the ability for us to build more densely in neighborhoods, particularly if the housing is 100% affordable housing, and making 100% affordable housing by right. SB 50 talked about making other kinds of construction by right, but this would be for 100% affordable.
Thank you. Next answer goes to Susan Collins.
Thank you. So I was avidly opposed to SB 50, and the primary reason that I opposed SB 50 is because I feel as though it was a huge overreach. Sacramento does not speak for the entire state. They cannot speak for every individual community. I'm a huge proponent for ensuring that each community has as much control over what happens in their community as possible. While I agree that we can increase density, it absolutely must be done in a way that allows communities as much input and as much say on how that happens. We cannot just turn everything over to what works in Sacramento does not work in Toluca Lake, it does not work in Hollywood, it does not work in Sherman Oaks. We absolutely must retain local control.
And again, just specifics on SB 50. Was the entire bill something that you did not support? 15 seconds added to this?
That's very brief. I did not support SB 50 in any way.
Okay. Sarah Kate Levy, next answer goes to you. 60 seconds.
So we're having this conversation today because we have a major, major housing crisis in this city that is the result of the fact that our council has failed to act to resolve it. And that's why Sacramento keeps coming down with plans to make us solve the problem. And by digging in our heels and refusing to engage in that fight, we are going to lose our voice in this process. Here are the things I really liked about the last draft of SB 50. I liked that they gave us 2 years to make our own plans and say we can do it without Sacramento getting in our way. I liked that SB 50 protected tenants. You couldn't use SB 50 to empty a building and redevelop it if people lived in it. We don't do that here. I liked that you couldn't use SB 50 to build in fire zones. We don't do that here. I liked that you could have a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex in your neighborhood because personally, I'd rather live next to a 3,000 square foot triplex with 3 families in it than a 7,000 foot McMansion with 1. There's so much we could have done, and I would as council member.
Thank you. Councilmember Rue.
Thank you. I opposed SB 50, and I led the charge in the city council to oppose SB 50 because while it tries to tackle the housing crisis, what it really doesn't do is what we really have in the city of LA is not a housing crisis, but an affordable and moderate income housing crisis. SB 50 failed to have enough inclusionary zoning for affordable housing or moderate income housing. It failed to protect existing affordable housing stock. It failed to protect renters. And don't take my word for it. This is why every single renters' rights advocacy groups, low-income community groups, all opposed SB 50. And you know, the problem with SB 50 is it's a stick-and-stick approach. It's not trying to work with us. A 2-year moratorium to tell us to do what they want us to do is not working together. I would have loved to have seen some sort of incentive approach where they help us try to build, because we do have a housing crisis. We do need to build more, and we can't do it alone. We need the help of Sacramento, whether it's a new type of California redevelopment agency. We need to work together hand in hand to solve our housing crisis.
Thank you. This next question comes from the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. Short-term rentals, including Airbnb, have proved controversial. Some feel that they negatively impact neighborhoods and exacerbate our housing crisis. Others contend that the last year's short-term rental ordinance is hurting those who rely on their homes as a source of supplemental income. What is your position on short-term rentals, and what actions will you take to enact and enforce relevant policy? And this first answer goes to Susan Collins. You have 60 seconds.
Everyone is aware that many of the Airbnb problems come from the short-term rentals being used as party houses, people that come for a vacation and they cause problems in the neighborhood. I think that certainly we don't want to limit people that need the additional income from being able to do that. So there needs to be strict oversight, and I know that there have been some limitations put on them, and I support those limitations. I think that each individual community and each property needs to be taken on an individual basis, but we definitely do need, thank you, we definitely do need to limit and protect and preserve the quiet enjoyment of all of our neighbors. And if there is an Airbnb problem that's prohibiting people from enjoying their homes in a quiet and peaceful manner, that needs to be addressed aggressively, and it needs to be stopped.
Thank you. Sarah Kate Levy.
As I've been campaigning for this seat for more than 18 months, I have talked to so many people in this city who were dependent upon their income as Airbnb and other short-term hosts. I live in a community that was plagued by party houses. I understand how horrifying it is to wake up next to broken beer bottles and listen to music all night long, and I think that we should come down hard on party houses. But I really believe that the senior citizens I have spoken to in the last 18 months, the empty nesters who need this income, We are a city in crisis. People are so close to the edge, and by taking away a steady and reliable income stream from responsible Angelenos, we have done a major disservice to so many people, and I think we should work to reverse that.
Thank you. Councilmember Rue.
Thank you. I want to first make it clear that I support all new economies and all types of new technologies. However, when it came to Airbnb, it was a big problem because what it did do was it combined room rentals with whole home rentals. And there are so many stories that I've heard throughout the district where there are single mothers who, because of Airbnb and renting out rooms, help make ends meet. And those individuals should not be penalized. But unfortunately, this new policy combined both. And when you talk about whole home rentals, not only does it reduce existing housing stock, but it creates these venomous house parties and party houses, which I was proud to author and pass the party house ordinance to prevent that from happening. Also added to that was the exotic animals ban, because some of these party houses had baby giraffes and tigers at these parties. But when it comes to Airbnb, it reduces housing stock. We got to make sure that we have enough housing available. But at the same time, I want to make it clear, just because you get rid of Airbnb doesn't help housing crisis.
Thank you. Penny and Jay run a tight ship here, guys. Nithya Raman has the next answer.
I want to talk a little bit about the context in which these debates around Airbnb are happening. I want to talk about the fact that we are building more housing in Los Angeles than we have in recent years, in the past few years, but that the vast majority of the housing that we're building is not meeting the needs of our current residents. In this district, over the last 4 years, we've built 93% luxury or market rate housing and only 7% affordable units. We're losing affordable units because affordable housing covenants are expiring, and a whole bunch of them are going to be expiring right now. This is the context in which debates around Airbnb are happening. It's a context of scarcity of affordable units for people. In this context, I think restricting the loss of rent-stabilized units to Airbnb is a very, very important thing to be doing. We, in fact, were just talking to a group of tenants yesterday who found that their building was actually being rented over illegally as Airbnb units. And I think this is really important. Until we can address our affordable housing crisis,
Thank you.
we can't do that.
Also on housing, and the first answer will go to Sarah Kate Levy. This has a 45-second answer period. And the question comes from the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council. Stakeholders are critical of LA's record in both historic preservation and insufficient new housing planning. There is a deficit of available units, but longtime residents are simultaneously frustrated by a lack of aesthetic design review for proposed projects. How would you address these conflicting priorities at the same time?
I believe that we can have new housing stock that maintains the character of neighborhoods. We have, throughout the history of this city, built multifamily units and towers and single-family homes in neighborhoods and ensured that design continued forward. There's frustration in a lot of neighborhoods in this district because they have specific plans and design review boards, and the things they send to the city get ignored and the rules get ignored. And I believe if you have a DRB and you have a process, you should have faith that your city will back you up.
Thank you. Councilmember Rue.
I believe in historic preservation, and I believe that we have to know where we're from to know where we're going. And I have a perfect record when it comes to supporting historic preservation. And an added benefit to that is it turns out that most of these buildings that are historically significant often happens to be RSOs or more affordable units. And that's why it is a double win in those cases, and this is why it's important that when it comes to building housing, it's not just building more housing and affordable and moderate income housing, but it's also preserving existing affordable housing stock, especially when there's an historic significance.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
Can you repeat the question, actually?
Yes. So this is about the situation with insufficient new housing. This question asker says there's a deficit of available units, but longtime residents are simultaneously frustrated by a lack of aesthetic design review for proposed projects. How would you address these conflicting priorities at the same time?
I think there is a real need for new housing, but I think this question and a lot of the questions that come up around planning for new housing come out of a context of deep distrust in Los Angeles between residents and City Hall. And I think that distrust comes from, for decades, the only people who have funded City Hall races have been the real estate industry. They have been the ones who have plowed money into City Hall campaigns, they've plowed money into candidates, and I think unless we take away a lot of real estate influence from City Hall, ideally through publicly financed elections, we will not have a context through which questions around design can be discussed in a context of trust between residents and people who are responsible for maintaining these rules.
Thank you. And Susan Collins.
So I would like to encourage community involvement in this process, and we can do that by strengthening our community outreach programs. As it is now, so many residents and community members don't even know how effective their voice really can be. And I agree with Nithya that there is a loss of trust and faith. We need to make certain that people are empowered by the process and that they know that they can come and participate in their neighborhood council meetings, they can go to City Hall, and that their voices will be heard, and that they do have a say in preserving the culture in their communities while also increasing our housing availability.
Thank you. The next question is also on the subject of housing. And this first answer will go to Councilmember Ryu, and you'll have 45 seconds. Los Angeles has one of the country's lowest rates of home ownership, and purchasing a home in CD4 is prohibitively expensive to many middle-class earners. Additionally, new apartment development rarely includes units priced for the middle class. What policy changes would you advocate to address middle-class housing concerns?
I feel that it's catered to me because I've recently introduced, and I've been working on for several years, the need for moderate income housing. This is where I need your support to make sure that we pass in the City Council so that we have incentives to developers to build more moderate income housing, workforce housing for our teachers, firefighters, and construction workers. Because right now, people making $40,000 to $80,000. Because right now, the people who are building these buildings can't even afford to live there. And as it was stated before, 91% of 80,000 units that were built in the last 5 years have been luxury. Only 8.5% were affordable. And when it comes to moderate income housing, 0.5%. 430 units out of 80,000 were moderate income. That's where the problem is, and that's where I'm working to make sure we have clauses and incentivize to build for that.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
I think if we can build more housing, we can actually get more moderate income housing. Part of the reason that we've had a situation in Los Angeles where we've had extremely expensive housing being built is that a lot of the rules around housing here have meant that there's very few plots that are available for development. I think if we can open up the rules, particularly in neighborhoods that are rich with transit, that are near bus lines, that are near train lines, where we can increase density without necessarily increasing building height or changing rules around setbacks, if we can reduce parking requirements for the kind of building that we're doing, we will actually incentivize the construction of far more units that are affordable to the middle class. And as the supply of these units grows, we'll actually get cheaper housing over the long term.
Thank you. Susan Collins.
So I would like to expand the Section 8 and the voucher program so that it broadens the scope of who is eligible. I don't think that you should have to be in absolute poverty before you're eligible for subsidies. I think that we should expand that to on a sliding scale, and I think we should also have a feature in there that also attaches the amount of subsidies that you get to the proximity of your housing, your proposed housing, to your work environment. If we're able to do that, if we're able to provide more subsidies, depending if you are closer and it would eliminate your need for transportation, we can accomplish two things. We can add more housing and we can also reduce our carbon footprint at the same time.
And Sarah Kate Levy.
One of the reasons we see so much expensive housing going up in this city is that it is very difficult to build anything else in this city. And we have to remember that the people who control what we build here and control the zoning and the land use are our council. Our council should be incentivizing 100% affordable builds, speeding them through permitting, letting them get away with less and less parking, and saying, go now, go fast, because we're losing our affordable housing as the covenants expire. But we should not keep putting affordable housing on the back of the market rate developers, because we're seeing they're not delivering it back to us. And the more we ask, the less they will build. In Santa Monica, they asked for more affordable units than we already ask in this city, which is 18 to 25%. Santa Monica asked for 30, and building stopped.
The next set of questions is on the environment, and it's my pleasure to welcome a John Marshall High School student to ask the first question. This will start first with Nithya Raman, and you'll have 60 seconds. And that student is 11th grader Linda Yoon, who is co-president of Sunrise JMHS. So welcome to Linda.
Hi, my name is Linda Yoon, and I'm a junior attending John Marshall High School. I'm the co-president of a club at the school known as Sunrise JMHS, which is a branch of the larger Sunrise movement. As a young person, I'm extremely concerned about the environmental crisis that we are in. So my question to all of you is, can you commit to getting Los Angeles to 100% clean, renewable energy by 2030? And if so, what plans do you have to make it a reality?
Nithya.
I'm very happy that you asked this question because I'm actually the only candidate in this race that's been endorsed by the Sunrise Movement in Los Angeles. And we've laid out an environment plan on our website that talks about a number of aggressive environmental goals that we need to meet to address climate crisis in the most urgent way. One of those is getting to 100% renewables. And I want to talk about Los Angeles's incredible asset, which is that we have our own municipal utility. We own the DWP. So we can actually set an aggressive timeline for us to get to 100% renewables by 2030. We can empower those within the DWP who want to get to that goal. We know that we can do it through two kinds of means. We can do it through distributed solar programs, and we can do it through investments in big solar projects like the one that we just invested in Eland, which actually generated cheaper energy for us than our natural gas investments. So we can get there. Scientists know exactly how, and we have every tool in our toolbox that we need to get to it quickly. We just have to want to do it. We have to feel that urgency, and we have to commit to those aggressive goals, not 2045 as the city has now committed to.
Susan Collins has the next answer.
So I think that there are so many easy things that we can do in our everyday lives that can get us so much closer, so much quicker. A lot of people don't realize that if we were to encourage only one person to add somebody into their car in a carpool, just add one person into your car and carpool, it actually is more effective than bus service. And it makes it actually on par with transit. And here's the good part. It doesn't cost the taxpayers billions of dollars in order to accomplish that, and it doesn't actually increase our carbon footprint while we're implementing it. One of the problems that I see in the city of Los Angeles is that we're constantly implementing solutions that in the process of building out that solution worsens the problem. There are a lot of things such as doing this. We need to protect our green spaces. Right now, with the homelessness crisis, with everyone in the park, we're dumping, with the amount of people that we have on the streets, we're dumping over 17 million pounds of toxic waste into our soil and into our waterways. We absolutely must protect our green space.
That hammer comes down pretty fast there, that stop sign. And just really quickly, 15 seconds, yes on committing to 100% clean renewables by 2030, or do you think that the city's goals 2045 are sufficient?
I would love to say that we could make it by an earlier date, but I think that it's a lofty goal, and I think we can certainly aim for that, but I think it would be probably the later date.
Thank you. Sarah Kate Levy.
I think it is possible to get to 100% renewable by 2030. I think we have to get incredibly serious, however, about a holistic plan to get there. I've been running on a platform of housing and transit and trees because for me, housing density and increased transit will allow us to stop pumping as much carbon into the air as we are now, and increasing our park space and replanting our urban forest will let us suck down the other carbon. One of the opportunities we have with housing density is to build out our own microgrids on the rooftops of our taller buildings. I have spoken to workers at the DWP union who are normally very against clean energy, and what I've been told by people in that union is we just put solar powers on the top of every building downtown, we'd have a microgrid in place today that could provide all the power you needed downtown. Just as the state is saying all new home construction should have solar panels on top, I believe we as a city should be saying all buildings should have solar on top.
Thank you. And Councilmember Ryu.
Thank you. You know, I'm very proud to have joined the mayor and as well as the Los Angeles City Council to adopting the Green New Deal. But whether it's 2045 or 2030, it's too slow. We only have one environment, we only have one planet, and we need to do this as soon as humanly possible. And in the City Council, whether we're closing down coal-fired plants, investing in clean energy and solar, but it's also thinking outside the box. It's about how do we increase access to our parks while decreasing congestion and pollutants. It's about making sure that we, and I've been leading on rebuilding our urban forest, investing in our urban forest, and I've been leading on that as well. And I'm one of two council members who even had the courage to vote against the DWP. So it takes all of us to work together, and that's why I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, the California League of Conservation Voters, environmental champions like Mary Nichols, Eric Garcetti, and so many more.
Thank you. This next question is also on the environment, and it comes from Friends of the LA River. First answer will go to Susan Collins. You have 45 seconds. Please share your plans for reducing plastics and shifting the culture of waste in the city of Los Angeles.
So I am a supporter of an organization called Now, which implements several, again, very, very easy things such as telling people when they deliver food, you don't need the plastic utensils. We don't need the styrofoam containers. There's a lot of things that we can do to reduce our waste. Reusing all of our plastic bags, obviously. The plastic straws, we've already implemented that. So there's a lot of very simple things that we can do on an everyday basis that will help to reduce that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah Kate Levy.
So I bring my trusty water bottle everywhere. I believe the thing that most of us end up spending most of our single-use plastics on are these water bottles. And by investing in infrastructure in this city that allowed us to have water fountains in every public place where you could refill the same way that we are putting EV chargers all over the city so you can tank up, we could get so many people off these and on these. We have a serious problem in single-use plastics because we have nowhere to recycle them in this state. We've closed down all of our recycling centers, and China's not buying this stuff anymore, and this is gas. This is just gas. So by ensuring that everywhere you went, you could bring your own containers, restaurants, grocery stores, other countries, other cities do this, and we could do it too.
And Councilmember Ryu.
Thank you. I'm proud of the fact that over 10 years ago, I worked for Supervisor Yvonne Burke, who was the champion and led on the plastic bag ban, and that was over a decade ago. Here in the City Council, we've even went further, and my colleagues and I all voted and supported to make sure we have a plastic straw ban. But we're going even further, especially with the mayor's Green New Deal, and it's not necessarily public information yet, but banning of plastic bottles. And whether, and we'll be in full support, and whether it's starting with all major games, but eventually we want to phase out all single-use plastic bottles in the city of LA. And when that legislation comes forward, I'd be supportive of that.
Nithya Raman.
We actually had legislation at the state level that was supposed to prevent the use of single-use plastics at the state. I want to just talk for a moment about why that ban didn't move forward. And that was because companies that were interested in that industry spent a lot of money to make sure that those laws didn't get passed. And I think unless we are very clear that those same companies will not be spending money in City Hall here to push against the kind of legislation that we desperately need, we will not get the kind of urgent action on things like single-use plastics that we need to get to. So again, I think publicly financed elections, I think making sure that we get corporate money out of City Hall is so essential to achieving these goals.
The next set of questions is on transportation, and this question comes from the Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council. 60 seconds will be your time, and Sarah Kate Levy, you have the first answer. 236 people died in car crashes in Los Angeles in 2019. More than half were pedestrians. Pedestrian and cyclist deaths in the U.S. were the highest in 2018 since 1990. What specific measures would you take to make Council District 4 safer and more accessible for walkers, runners, and cyclists?
I think every day about these people who are dying in our streets. Only a few weeks ago, we lost a sheriff's deputy who was helping a woman across the street. District 4 has a lot of high injury network locations in it, and we need to do way more to slow traffic in our streets, to make our streets friendlier to cyclists, to build out protected bus lanes. The more we can do to narrow our streets and ensure that they are not highways. When I walk through this district, I talk to so many voters who go, can you get me a stop sign? Can you get me a crosswalk? What can you do to make sure they're not drag racing past my house? And for me, that means rebuilding our infrastructure to say that we prioritize people and going safely across our city more than we prioritize people flying down our roads. And I will pledge to fight every day to keep every Angelino safe, make sure kids can walk to school, make sure cyclists can bike.
Thank you.
It's very important to me.
Councilmember Rue.
You know, I fully support the City of LA's Vision Zero plan, and we in the City Council has made it a priority in funding and execution, and I'm committed to making LA safe for all. And you know, whenever we have issues with safety, I want to make sure I work with the experts. And when it comes to pedestrian safety, when it comes to all of our streets being safe, whether it's widening sidewalks, whether it's additional lights, bike lanes, protected bike lanes, bollards, or continental crosswalks, I use every tool in my arsenal to make sure that we make it safe for pedestrians, for cyclists, and making sure that we have safety for our students and parents and everyone who's walking, and making sure our community is walkable.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
We have plan after plan at City Hall that talks about safer streets. We have a bike plan from 2010. We have a first-last connectivity plan from the Metro that talks about getting pedestrians and bicyclists to train stations. We have a mobility plan, 2035, which also talks about this, which talks about building out a network of protected bike lanes across the city. Yet, over and over again, these plans go unimplemented. Council members from across the city have simply not built these plans out. And this is because every time you take road space away from cars, a small majority of voices speaks out against that. And I think what we have in LA is a demonstration through the extent of support from Measure M, through the extent of activism that we've seen around safe streets, is that the majority of us want better. So that's why I'm excited about this election, because so many more people are going to vote in this election because it's overlapping with our federal elections. And I think we can say we want to take back our streets.
Thank you. Susan Collins.
So I absolutely support and would thoroughly enjoy a more walkable and bikeable city. But I'm also aware that it's not appropriate for every area and for every neighborhood. And I don't think that we can seriously have a conversation about reducing our carbon footprint while also increasing situations that increase gridlock, anxiety, and with that gridlock, of course, comes a greater carbon footprint. We have to be realistic. We have to implement protected bike paths and walkability in communities where it's appropriate, where it's safe, But we have got to look at the overall picture, make certain that they're done responsibly in neighborhoods and communities where they're appropriate, keep people safe, don't create additional gridlock, and therefore also create a greater carbon footprint.
Thank you. Sarah Kate Levy. Oh, I'm sorry.
I
You started,
started.
right? Okay, we're moving
Happy
on.
to expound on this at length.
Thank you. This question comes from the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council. GPS apps like Waze have created significant traffic issues on the narrow roads in hillside areas. How would you mitigate this issue? And Councilmember Ryu has the first answer. You have 45 seconds.
Thank you. This is a thorn on my side issue where I've been working closely with all the various neighborhoods on especially cut-through traffic. As everyone knows, GPS technology, this is a private technology where we can't necessarily dictate what they can and can't do on public streets. But I've worked with the city attorney to bring a lawsuit against Waze. Because you know what? When it comes to these GPS technologies, they were supposed to help us mitigate traffic as well as make it safe, not increase it and make it unsafe, which is why I partner with the city attorney to push, and I've met with executives time and time again to try to make sure that they are more cognizant of the neighborhoods that they're directing traffic towards to make it safer and friendlier for all.
Thank you, Nithya Raman.
I want to talk a little bit about why we have so much worse traffic in Los Angeles these days. And I think there's two real reasons. One is that we haven't invested as much as we need to in the kinds of bus service, in the kinds of public transit access that we need to actually get people out of their cars and into transit and into other modes of getting around the city. We also have not built enough housing here, so people who are working in Los Angeles can't live in Los Angeles anymore. And so they're driving more and more from further and further away to get to work every day. That's the context in which this discussion is taking place. So I think we need to definitely do a much better job of advocating for residents vis-a-vis Waze, but we also can do so much more to reduce traffic overall and reduce the need for Waze at all.
Susan Collins has the next answer.
So I know that this is an ongoing issue, and it's an ongoing issue for almost every single community in Los Angeles. And so I actually spent a good bit of time speaking to a couple of the programmers for the mapping apps. And what they told me is that there are some relatively easy ways that you can redirect traffic. You can put no left turn between this certain times, no right turn between this certain times. In my neighborhood in particular, when that has happened, it's only pushed it back further and created additional gridlock. The reason for that is because they weren't strategically done. They weren't done in an effective way so that it stemmed the issue from both sides. I think that nobody knows your communities better than you do, and I want to partner with the communities to talk to you and say, what do you think? You drive this every single day. What do you know would work for you? Let's work with you.
Thank you. And Sarah Kate Levy, it is now your turn.
So I think we all live in this shared crisis of gridlock and Waze pushing people through our neighborhoods, and those of us who use these technologies live with a whole other set of challenges. In the short term, the way you alter the GPS technology in your neighborhoods is to put up new infrastructure signage saying these roads, left turn, right turn, exactly what Susan was saying. But in the long term, the problem is how do we create better choices for Angelenos to travel around the city, be it on protected bus lanes and protected bike lanes, in short-term city shuttles that get you first mile, last mile to your trains. How do we make it so those of us who want to travel differently will leave the roadways and allow people who want to stay in their cars to travel like that?
Thank you. Next question, also on transportation. Nithya Raman will have the first answer, and you'll have 45 seconds. Effective public transit is a critical factor in addressing transportation, environmental, and housing issues. While planned expansions of LA's rail system are great, they also take a long time to implement and are expensive. Many Angelenos don't consider buses a viable option. What changes would you advocate for in order to improve the LA bus system and encourage ridership?
I think there's two things you can do to make buses so much better. First of all, I love buses. I've taken them all my life, and I want to take them more. But it's really hard to take buses in LA because the two buses that come closest to my house for most of the day come once an hour. That is way too infrequent. We have to make sure our bus network is extremely frequent, that buses come every 10 minutes and maybe even more during rush hour. We also need to make it faster to go in buses through dedicated bus lanes that make it faster to go in buses than sitting in the rest of traffic. I think both of these things will really incentivize bus use throughout the city.
Thank you. Susan Collins.
So as I mentioned before, I think that what people don't realize is that just by adding one person to a carpool reduces our carbon footprint dramatically. And in fact, it's better than the bus service. And it doesn't cost billions of dollars. The rail also costs billions of dollars, and the amount of toxicity that puts into our community while that's being built out will take decades to recover from. One of the things that we also need to do is we need to create a structure for mom and pop local businesses so that people can actually live, work, eat, and participate on a smaller level so that they don't have to travel, they don't have to commute as far. If we can create and really nurture those local businesses, our communities thrive.
Thank you. Sarah Kate Levy.
I love the bus. I also ride the bus as much as I can, and I agree that the challenges are convenience and accessibility and reliability. On the city level today, we could ensure that we had Dash service in every single neighborhood and that it ran every 10 minutes, not every 45. I will advocate for protected bus lanes on every street that used to have a streetcar. We used to have the best transit in the nation, and we could have it again with protected bus lanes across this county. And in a simple way, benches, shade, lighting, even, just a sign saying we're gonna move the bus in 3 weeks on the side of the bus bench so that when the service changed, you knew where you were going to go. There are so many strategies we could undertake, and one of the reasons we're behind is we sold our rights to doing this to private.
Councilmember Rue.
Thank you. To directly answer your question about buses, we need to make the buses cleaner, we need to make them safer, we need to make them more user-friendly, and we need to make them more convenient, which leads us to the bigger problem. It's the first and last mile problem. People want to take the bus or take the metro subway, but the problem is, how do you get there? How do you get from my house to the bus stop or the subway station? Even when you drive there, there's not enough parking there. This is why we need a multimodal strategy and a whole ecosystem, which is why I've been the champion and the leader on new technologies like dockless bikes and scooters. I know some of you guys are annoyed by it, and I'm not saying that's going to solve the entire solution, but it's a piece of the puzzle. Because for every younger person who's on a dockless bike or scooter, what are they not doing? They're not driving, they're not on an Uber or Lyft. And this is where I've also championed autonomous vehicles.
Thank you.
And this is where smart growth comes into play.
Next question is on public safety. Susan Collins, you'll have the first answer, and that's a 60-second question. And it comes from the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. Sidewalks in Toluca Lake were recently demolished in order to upgrade streetlights on Riverside Drive. This work was to be completed before Halloween, but is still ongoing. Deprioritized sidewalk repair adversely affects communities, especially disabled stakeholders. How would you ensure the city and contracted vendors complete projects on time? And how will you hold them accountable if they fail to meet deadlines?
So sidewalk safety is one of my primary concerns, and it's my primary concern because I actually have a mother that is confined to a wheelchair. She requires a wheelchair for mobility. If there are trees, if there are broken sidewalks, they need to be addressed immediately. Also one of our biggest concerns is the homeless that are constantly blocking the sidewalk. Our city as a whole needs to aggressively pursue making certain that all of our sidewalks and all of our public areas are available with ease and comfort to people that have disabilities. If the sidewalks are not being addressed in a timely manner, there has to be an open line of communication with your council members, with your city council, to ensure that you have a way to file a complaint and that they must be responsive. That's their job. It's their job to be responsive, and you need to hold them accountable for that.
Sarah Kate Levy.
I love that we're talking about this today because only this week a constituent in Toluca Lake came to my office in Sherman Oaks and said this sidewalk's been broken for months. And I called the council office and I'm trying to figure out who the contractor is because I feel like I could get the contractor to move faster than the city does. I believe that it is the job of the council office to be tracking repairs in your neighborhood, tracking all projects, all service calls. When you make a 311 call, we should be taking the case number item and helping you project manage it. But I believe that if you have a city contractor whose work is too slow or has disappeared, just the same way as you would at your own home, your contractor walks off, you yank that contract. Contractors not doing good work in this city should not retain those contracts.
Councilmember Rue.
Thank you. You know, when it comes to infrastructure repair, I am just as frustrated, which is why 4.5 years ago when I got elected, I've been advocating since then, even to this day, the need for our Office of Construction Coordination. It is exactly what it sounds like. Our city still doesn't have that, and it's up to us to even make sure that all of these repairs get done. But it is even, what I am proud of is the fact that I was able to increase and make sure and advocate for an increase in funding for our infrastructure repairs and street repairs by adding $25 million to street repair, $7 million just for concrete streets, including all of our, now having a repair program for failed streets and a repair program for concrete streets that haven't been touched in 90 years. In addition to that, having a tree replacement policy when it comes to sidewalk repair that I've been working closely with Windsor Square, which I'm going to use as a blueprint for the rest of the city. These are complex issues that require coordination from multiple agencies and multiple departments, and I am more than committed to solve this, and this is why we need the Office of Construction Coordination.
Thank you. Nithya Raman.
I think the issue of accountability is an incredibly important one. We've seen this over and over again with our city council, where we make investments with our tax dollars, and contractors, builders, and city departments don't meet the promises that they're making around what will be delivered. We saw this in HHH, which was supposed to deliver 10,000 units of permanent supportive housing in 10 years, but has only delivered less than 6,000, and it will take longer than 10 years to get to that building. And I think the issue is that council does not hold departments accountable. Council doesn't hold contractors accountable. That is part of our job. That is an incredibly important part of a council member's job. And I think in office, I would be very committed to making sure that any investments that we make with tax dollars are monitored closely, and that we ensure that every dollar that's spent is delivering exactly what it's supposed to be delivering for our residents.
Thank you. The next question is on the subject of recreation and parks. It's the question from the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council. Park need is measured in acres of green space, not accessibility or amenities. This classifies many CD4 communities as low park need because they are near Griffith or Runyon Canyon Park, leaving them underserved in the quality and number of usable facilities. How would you allocate funds and advocate for more recreation facilities in our communities? And the answer goes to Sarah Kate Levy first, and you have 45 seconds.
I believe that every community in our district should be able to access a park within walking distance so that you don't have to get in your car. One of the strategies we can undertake is clawing back some parking in this city. We have 18 million parking spots countywide for 5.5 million cars. That space could be taken back for recreation for us. I believe that we should take the fence down at Rowena Reservoir, and that should be accessible for people. That is an easy strategy, and I support all of Silver Lake Forward's efforts to make sure that we have recreation and a people-friendly experience at Silver Lake Reservoir as well.
Councilmember Rue.
Yes, I think park access is very, very important. Growing up as a child, living in a two-bedroom apartment, we did not have a front yard or a backyard, and it was once in a while when my parents took us to Griffith Park where I was able to run like a child. And it's very important, and I've never forgotten that, and that's why I'm so proud that we've refurbished and built 5 new playgrounds, purchased directly by the City of LA or partnered with nonprofit organizations to purchase additional acreage to enlarge our parks, whether it's some land in Laurel Canyon, whether it's Runyon Canyon or Griffith Park. I've been a supporter of Measure W, but more importantly, in our communities, I am proud of the work I've done with LAUSD for a joint use, because we have a lack of space in the City of LA, but one piece of property that's not being used are elementary schools where they're open lots, and we want to make sure
Thank
we
you.
come up with an idea.
Nithya Raman. Man, they really cut those mics on time, don't they? We've got a tight schedule. Nithya Raman.
I think we can definitely do a much better job of utilizing our existing park resources in CD4, whether it be the Rowena Reservoir and opening that up, whether it be making sure the Silver Lake Reservoir is accessible for everybody around it and has a variety of uses in it. But I also want to talk about the city as a whole because council members vote at large. And I also want to say that CD4, relative to the rest of the city, is park rich. So as a council member, I would advocate for more use of parks and better use of parks within our district, but I also want to make sure that the whole city has access to parks, particularly in neighborhoods where they have none right now. And I think that that's an extremely important role that we should be pushing for.
Thank you. Susan Collins.
So I also would really like to advocate for the open use of the Rowena Reservoir. It's absolutely absurd to me that that's not available to the members of this community. I'd also like to ensure that any new construction is, the part of that plan is that incorporated is green space for each area, for each new construction project. I also want to advocate and make certain that the parks that we do have are kept clean and safe and usable for our families, because right now they're not. Most people I know with families have stopped taking their children to the parks. We need to ensure that those parks are kept safe and clean and create more additional green spaces with all new construction.
Thank you. Next question is on the topic of business, and it comes from the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. The first answer will go to Councilmember Rue, and you will have 45 seconds. How would you address increasing commercial lease costs and the decreasing representation of small businesses in our communities?
You know, growing up as a child, my immigrant family, we saved enough money to open up our own toy store. Not only was I the most popular kid on the block, but I also know how hard it was for my mom and dad to work 14, 16-hour days. It is very, very important to work with our business community, and I've already convened an organization, a meeting between all the different chambers of commerce to seek ideas on how we could develop and foster more smaller business locally, as well as attracting investments from other states as well as internationally, so we could help revive our economy.
Nithya Raman.
I think this is a really important issue. So many small businesses are reporting massive increases in rents, which are leading to them closing down or moving out of the neighborhoods that they were once in, and a homogenization of what we see in businesses. It's all chain stores and banks and pharmacies. I think we could think about doing the same kinds of aggressive interventions in commercial leases as we are thinking about for housing. I mean, could we have a commercial rent stabilization ordinance? Is that something that we could discuss here? Is that something that we need to protect our small business? I think we should be open to all of that because the transformation in our city's businesses has been really stark. And I think if we want to preserve this city as a place of diversity and as a place that's fun to shop in, that's important.
Thank you. Susan Collins.
So, supporting local businesses is one of my passions. I think that it's too much now we're referring to clicking on Amazon, clicking here, clicking there, and as a result, our small mom and pop businesses are going by the wayside, and it has a multi-layered effect in our communities. We need to do things by, for instance, AB 5 that just happened, really hurts small local businesses. Prop 13 that is also coming down the pack also is going to have an effect on small local mom and pop businesses. We need to make certain that they are aware of their relationships with their local Chamber of Commerce, and the local Chamber of Commerce should do more to support and do everything they can to help our small businesses thrive in our communities because they are the lifeblood of this community.
Thank you. Sarah Kate Levy.
Small business is absolutely the backbone of our city because not only do we rely on the sales tax the small business generates to provide all the services in this city, but because a vibrant neighborhood filled with vibrant businesses creates a healthy community. I've spent so many hours talking to small business people in this city, and the challenges they tell me are not just leases, it's also the speed of permitting through this city and how long it can take to get your permits while you hold your space and hold your space and hold your space. It's the lack of backup from the city when you hit a road bump. I've heard about ADA lawsuits and other situations where you get in a bind and you've got nobody to turn to at the city. And let's talk about our cannabis rollout, which could have put so much money into this budget. We got to do better.
This is a question from the Los Feliz Improvement Association. Los Feliz has very few public parking facilities. While efforts to improve public transit are laudable, parking lots and garages support local retail activity by providing convenient customer parking. What steps will you take to support the business corridors of District 4 and provide parking in underserved areas? And this is a 45-second question. The first answer goes to Nithya Raman.
I take a little bit of issue with this question because I do think we do have a lot of parking in Los Angeles. And I think we need to be doing better at supporting other ways of getting into business districts, really supporting those ways, really supporting public transit access, really supporting buses, really supporting pedestrian access to these neighborhoods, really supporting bike lanes so that people can use not just cars, but every other mode that they have available at their disposal to get to businesses and to shop. We shouldn't have to be relying just on parking to attract shoppers to these places.
Susan Collins.
So I think that certainly assisting the city in finding ways to create parking that is plentiful right now is very important. It's imperative. Right now, I know we're all talking about getting people out of their cars, but we are not there yet. We have to if we're going to also support our local businesses, we have to make certain that people have the ability to get there, to shop there, and when they do shop there, that they can carry those purchases back home. We're also not taking into account that, there is an elderly population here that may not always feel comfortable taking a bus or a Razor scooter to the local grocery store. They need to be able to park a car. They may not want to ride a bike. They might want to take their car and pick up their groceries.
Penny and Jay, do you guys take Razor scooters anywhere? No? Sarah Kate Levy.
I live in this neighborhood. I circle the block. I'm gone, I'm back, okay. I circle the blocks, I understand the challenge, but I do believe that we will have less pressure on our parking in these neighborhoods and in Silver Lake and in Los Feliz when we get serious about local transit. When we have dash buses that are convenient, people will ride them to the shops. When we have protected bike infrastructure that is safe and contiguous, people will ride them to the shops. Now, you don't want to ride your bike, you don't want to ride your bus, great. We're going to get on the buses and the bikes for you, and if you still want to park, it will be copious because we're not circling the block looking for those spots.
Councilmember Roop.
Thank you. This is the one area where developers and I always agree on, and that's more parking. But unfortunately, this is where we unfortunately pit neighborhoods and businesses together. And this is where smart growth needs to be more implemented in a proper way. When it comes to smart growth, it's basically we want to create an environment or a neighborhood where you live, where you work, and where you play, where you shop. But the problem is right now, too many bills in Sacramento and locally is where it says, just because you build on a subway or a metro station doesn't mean that everyone's going to take it. We got to make sure we incentivize properly, have more affordable and moderate income housing, working class families who are actually taking public transit be afforded to live in those units.
Thank you. This next question is on education, and we're welcoming another John Marshall High School student to ask it. Her name is Sofia Olivares. She's an ambassador for the Marshall Student Wellness Committee, and she is a senior. Welcome, Sofia.
Hi, good evening. So my question is, how can the City Council support the LA Unified School District?
This is a 60-second question, and the first answer goes to Susan Collins.
I believe that The public education system in Los Angeles obviously needs a serious look because not all communities are being served equally. We need to ensure that every community, regardless of socioeconomic status, is provided with the equal opportunities, and that's not really currently happening. Unfortunately, I think taxpayers as a general rule are a little weary. We've had a lot of taxes come our way and they've been promised to go here, they've been promised to go there, and as a result, when taxes come up that say they're gonna go towards the school system, they're saying no. And they're saying no because what they want is they want the school system to go back, sharpen their pencils, balance their checkbook, and then tell us where the deficiencies are so that we can address those appropriately. And I have to say that I agree with that. There is a lot of wasteful spending. We need to stop the wasteful spending. We need to make certain that the teachers that are actually producing the best results are paid and that they are paid really well. The education of our
Thank
children.
you. Sarah Kate Levy.
The LA City Council does not generally deal with LAUSD issues. They are separate entities. And as far as what I can do to support LAUSD is I can ensure that we build enough affordable housing near our schools so that our families can stay near their local schools and our teachers can live near their local schools. I knocked on a door in Sherman Oaks last week with a woman who teaches in Eagle Rock. That's not right. Further, I support the schools and communities first proposition because what I know of that bill is that we need the funding for our schools and our municipal governments. And by closing the loophole that is allowing 6% of our commercial properties in this state to scam our system and steal from our communities, we will be able to fund 78% of the revenues coming in. And it is important that all of us here support that and return money to our schools.
And I'd just like to ask folks not to cheer or boo from the audience, please. Again, this question from Sofia Olivares was, how can the LA City Council support LAUSD? Next answer is Councilmember Rue.
Thank you. I support the school and communities first and as the split role. We need to reverse Prop 13 to make sure that our local governments and schools in particular gets the funding that it needs. But I'm also proud to have championed and led the way to make sure that we fund our after-school programs that were not funded, that were curtailed for the past several years, working with LA's Best and everyone else. But more importantly, I'm so proud of the program that we're launching this coming September of children's savings accounts that has been proven in other states and cities all across the nation, where it shows that a $50 savings account in the first grade increases college acceptance rates by 4-fold and college graduation by 3-fold. Now, how does it do that? It's an idea of planting the seed to tell young individuals that you can go to college, makes them go to college. And in LAUSD, where 80% of our students are under the federal poverty guideline and 17,000 students are homeless, this program is not just a college-bound program, it is a homeless prevention program, it is a crime prevention program, it is a poverty prevention program.
Thank you, Nithya Raman.
There are so many issues that face families of students at LAUSD. We don't directly deal with LAUSD decisions in the city of Los Angeles, but we can help protect those families in such powerful ways. We have 30,000 eviction filings a year in the city of Los Angeles, something like 500,000 evictions over an 8-year period in LA County. We can help families from losing their homes quickly and effectively. And we can help students who are facing real housing insecurity make sure that they are secure and able to attend school and do their best. We can do this by providing a lawyer for families who are facing evictions. That helps people stay in their home 84% of the time. We can provide emergency rental assistance to families who are in danger of eviction. We can also install a rent freeze because we control rents in 80% of units across the city through the rent stabilization ordinance. This is all within the power of the council to do. We haven't taken this action so far.
Okay, we're down to the final 3 questions, and I have the 2 submitted questions as well. Those are included in the final 3. Just a little teaser, the very last question is about wildlife in CD4, so that's fun. This question is from the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council, and Sarah Kate Levy, you'll be the first answer. This is a 60-second question. If elected, how would you work to support and empower volunteers of your constituent neighborhood councils? Slightly self-serving. Hollywood United Neighborhood Council, I see you.
Oh my. All of you neighborhood council people are just, the hours you put in, the amount you have to learn, the rules you have to follow. I do not envy you those roles, and I am so grateful that you undertake them. I believe that, honestly, there should be some per diem attached to these positions. I believe that you should be supported in community outreach. I believe that we should be bringing more of the community to you, and the department that oversees these councils should be helping you go into your communities, providing you more funding to do outreach and bringing people back, because you are the front lines of the communities and you bring that message to the councils, and we need to be able to ensure that you get to do your work as well as you can. And right now, the amount of work you do for so little glory is just thank you.
Councilmember Ryu.
I am so proud of my work with the neighborhood councils because, you know what, to this day, I am the only council member to have been a neighborhood council board member themselves. I know how hard and how much work you guys put into it, and we have worked together to do reforms that have been done in 10 years, rollover of funds, I mean, you name it. But more importantly, you know I work with you, and I will continue to work with you in my next term. For any neighborhood issue, I make sure they go in and consult with you first. Every developer in town knows before they come to my office, they should go and talk to their neighborhood council. And I am proud of that fact. I will continue on that record. I will continue to work closely with you because you are what makes this city great. You and your involvement is what makes this city strong. Thank you.
Nithya Raman.
As a member of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council's Homelessness Committee and the co-chair of it for the last few years, I've been deeply involved with the work that neighborhood councils do in Los Angeles, and it is a lot of work. It is from my involvement in the neighborhood councils that we actually started the SELA Neighborhood Homeless Coalition. It was a bunch of people from different neighborhood councils across the area that have come together and continue to do the work of addressing the needs of people experiencing homelessness in our part of the city. What I would love to do is to work with neighborhood councils to make them places where so many more people could come in and volunteer. These could be focal points for places in our community where residents could come in and have opportunities to serve others in their community. Right now, they're not really structured well to do that, and I would be pushing for reforms that made them really centers of volunteerism and giving back to neighbors and building community in Los Angeles.
And Susan Collins.
So ideally, what I would really love to see that would serve two purposes, actually. It would empower the neighborhood councils by empowering the communities that you're serving. Right now, when I canvass neighborhoods, and even in my own neighborhood, what I know to be true is that the vast majority of my neighbors and the people that I've canvassed don't even know of the neighborhood council's existence. And that's a shame, because through the neighborhood councils and the city council is what's forming what happens in their community. And it's not until something happens like, oh, by the way, there's gonna be a multiplex built 2 doors down from you, or oh, by the way, there's a homeless shelter being built 2 blocks away from you, that then they look up, oh, wait a minute, what happened? So if we're gonna empower you, we need to empower our communities, and we're gonna do that with community outreach, aggressive and effective, non-biased and truthful community outreach, so that the surrounding communities are engaged with you and feel compelled to participate with you. And that will create a community that we all feel better about and will empower all of us.
And this next question is one that was submitted today from this audience and was selected by a vetting committee of the League of Women Voters. It's going to be a 45-second question, and the first answer goes to Councilmember Ryu. It's on the issue of traffic. Bronson Canyon and Lake Hollywood are completely overrun with vehicle traffic due to the closure of the Griffith Park entrance off of Beechwood. How would you address this ongoing issue?
Thank you. This is the issue I've been working closely with all communities in the Beechwood Canyon area and beyond for the past 4.5 years, and I could easily say I've had hundreds of meetings, myself and my staff, on this issue alone. And this is where, if you go to my website, you can learn about the Dixon study and the 29 strategies, because it's not just a Beechwood Canyon and a Hollywood sign issue, it is a whole regional issue. That is why we have 29 strategies that we developed working closely with the community, getting all of their inputs, and every single idea has been included. And this is where we're executing, where you saw the launch recently of the Griffith Park line, where we will have an electric city-run bus that will go all throughout the entirety of Griffith Park to increase access to our park, but decreasing traffic, and eventually we're going to extend it to the next phases to connect all of the neighborhoods as well as neighborhood parks.
Nithya Raman.
I think this issue, like so many other issues that I've heard about in this run for City Council, requires some decisive action. I feel like too often we respond to problems like these, like traffic in Beechwood Canyon, with more studies, with 29-point strategies, with delayed responses. And I think what we should be doing is investing and taking action on issues, quick action that can actually relieve problems and make sure that we are reducing the amount of traffic in these communities, because I think it's a real problem for pedestrians and a real problem for cyclists in those areas, and I'm fearful of the accidents that will result with the kind of traffic burden that they're facing.
Susan Collins.
So one thing that I know for sure is that oftentimes the solution is worse than the problem. And what I've encountered in my own community is that this gridlock has increased, and it's increased with every solution that has been put forth. And what I know to be true is that every member in my community can look at the problem and go, oh my God, what were they thinking? If they just did this, if they just did that. Why is the city not, in a meaningful way, partnering with community members to find easily and effective solutions that can be implemented now? And that's so simple, and we can do it today, we can do it tomorrow. It's effective. You know your community better than anyone else. You know how this can be fixed better than anyone else. Let's work with you to implement solutions for your neighborhood.
Sarah Kate Levy.
I live in the impacted communities. And for many years, the stress of the traffic and the gridlock and the cigarette smoking in our hillsides has put a lot of us in fear across the surrounding canyons to the Hollywood sign. And what was interesting to me as I started talking to my neighbors in other impacted communities was how everybody's feeling was the council has not done enough to ensure that people have a safe and accessible way to access the park. I support a plan that will draw people to safe, accessible services. I support the Ford Trail hiking path. I support a true tourist attraction in Griffith Park like the Warner Brothers gondola, and I believe that the money we could generate in a public-private partnership with that park could build a land bridge in Griffith Park and help our lion find a girlfriend.
Okay, last question, everybody. We made it. 20 questions for 2020. And this first answer will go to Nithya Raman. It is a 45-second question on the topic of wildlife. Coyotes have become an ongoing safety concern for many residents with children and animals. If elected, what is your plan to address and improve animal control authority to deal with aggressive wildlife threatening our neighborhoods?
Ooh. Okay, that's a good question.
That came from right here in the audience tonight, so we
Okay.
get some.
You know, I
interesting
live
folks.
right near Silver Lake Reservoir, and I will say there has been a lot of coyotes around, but I haven't felt that things have been so aggressive. I do think that we are going to be doing a lot of investments in places like the Silver Lake Reservoir, in around the lake, in the reservoir and near the LA River, which is going to disturb wildlife. We have a lot of plans right now to disturb wildlife. And I think it is incredibly important to make sure that we do have a plan to ensure that coyotes are not ganging up in neighborhoods, they're not attacking animals, and to hold animal control accountable and to make sure that they're alerted when these investments are happening and when these kinds of new projects are being implemented, and that they're out there.
Thank you. Susan Collins.
So, as a rather avid animal advocate, I believe that this is something that comes with living in Los Angeles. We all know this. In my neighborhood in Sherman Oaks, I can tell you that coyote sightings are probably daily, if not several times a day. I have a small dog, I have a large dog, and I take steps on my own to ensure that the coyote population is not, we've encroached on their community. And we need to navigate that process in a way that is sensitive to our wildlife and also ensures our safety. We can ensure our safety, and by doing so, we can ensure their safety as well.
Sarah Kate Levy.
We see packs of coyotes roaming through our hillsides all the time, and sometimes it's very frightening. I understand the fear. I also believe that the best way to protect ourselves is to help coyotes protect themselves and to keep them out of our neighborhoods in packs as they are roaming now. And I think that means that we need to ensure that our city takes a stronger hammer to people that feed the wildlife. We should take a stronger hammer to people that let their trash pile up in their homes. We should ensure that we're not making a situation where the coyotes go, it's lunchtime all the time on our front lawns. There are ways to encourage animal life to move another way, and that is by ensuring that our streets are kept clean and our neighbors know not to feed the packs.
Thank you. And now it is time for closing statements, everybody. Oh, I'm so sorry, council member. I do not want to forget your answer about the coyote question. My apologies. Please.
Thank you. And it is very, very traumatic when you have your pet, your loved one, one of your family members being snatched up by a coyote. And this was a crisis that happened 4.5 years ago, and actually it was to a more severe degree because there was lots of droughts going on. And a lot of the coyotes up in the wilderness were basically starving and thirsty, and they were coming down. We had coyote sightings as low as down as Windsor Square, Hancock Park. So I know this is a big issue, and this is why I made sure that we funded our animal care control. When I got elected 4.5 years ago, we literally had one person for the entire district. It's also about increasing education and letting people know that coyotes, if you treat them, they're wild animals. If you treat them like a pet, they aren't scared of human beings. We got to also lock our trash cans and have other means where coyotes don't see easy food.
I hate to cut you off because I almost tried to cut off your whole question, but okay, now it is time for closing statements, and we are going to go in opposite order from the opening. That means Nithya Raman is starting out, and these are 90-second closing statements.
I want to just thank you all for coming today and for listening through what is an incredibly long session. I want to talk a little bit about why I decided to run at this time. When I was dealing with homelessness in my own neighborhood, when I was looking at our housing crisis, what I saw over and over again was a council that has incredible powers. Los Angeles City Council has incredible powers. We have a weak mayor, strong council system. We have 15 council members that each act as mini mayors. And I saw over and over again that these individuals were looking away from their powers to push us in the direction that we need to move to in Los Angeles, to move aggressively towards caring for our unhoused residents, to move aggressively to protecting residents who are on the verge of eviction, to making sure our skyrocketing rents can actually, we can actually stop skyrocketing rents in many ways, to making sure that we're actually building the kind of housing that we so desperately need. We need affordable housing. We need deeply affordable housing. And we have to be using every tool in our toolbox to make sure that we're getting to the outcomes that we need to get to, that we're addressing climate crisis again with the urgency that we need. This is a moment in Los Angeles where we have an opportunity to look away from the politics of complacency, of corruption, of cynicism, and to work together to build the Los Angeles that is just and sustainable, the Los Angeles that we deserve. And I want to invite you all to join me on that journey.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryu.
Thank you. Solutions are not easy. We have to do studies and comprehensive studies because one thing I will promise you is The need for a quick fix. I will not shift over one problem from one neighborhood just to send it to another neighborhood. This is why we need to work together. But when it comes to homelessness and some of the biggest crises of our city, like homelessness, I hear your frustration. I know your frustration because you know what? I'm frustrated too. But you know, there is no one person or one solution that could solve homelessness. If it did, if it could, it would have been solved by now. And I've been working on homelessness for 16 years, and I know the situation looks bleak, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Why? Because 4.5 years ago, I tried to talk about homelessness. No one wanted to hear it. 10 years ago, we warned folks about homelessness. Everyone said, out of sight, out of mind, just get them out of here, I don't care. But today, not only are we talking about homelessness at the debates, at the forum, but also you call my office and say, council member, I don't want to call the LAPD. What more can I do to actually help the homeless? This is an opportunity here. With this crisis is the opportunity for us to not just help our unhoused neighbors, but actually go to the root of the problem and solve homelessness for 5 years and 10 years. Because homelessness is not just a mental health crisis. It's not just a housing crisis. Homelessness is a poverty crisis. And together, we will be able to solve it.
Sarah Kate Levy.
Well, first I want to thank all of you for coming to this today. I want to thank all the neighborhood councils, the Los Feliz Improvement Association, our moderator, the league. I'm a leaguer. I'm also a mom of 4 kids. And as a mom of 4 children, I cannot sit back and watch our city slow boat on issues that are important to my family as they grow and build their own families in this city. And what that means to me is we must fight for affordable housing for me today and my children tomorrow. We must fight for safe streets where my kids can walk down the sidewalk or ride a bike on the road. We must fight for trees and park space so my kids don't grow up choking on our bad air. We can do all of this. Other cities are doing it, and we have the playbook. I'm not running so that I can go to city council and take 15-0 votes. I am not running to make short-term decisions that will leave us in long-term pain. I am running because I love this district. I have lived here 20 years. I have never lived anywhere else. I fell in love in this district. I rented my first apartment in this district. I bought my home in this district, and I have chosen to raise my 4 kids here. And I am not afraid to show up every day and fight for this community I love. And I know this has been a short conversation tonight, and we've talked about things in tiny sound bites, but my team and I will be outside for as long as it takes to have a longer conversation with anyone who'd like to talk more. Thank you so much.
And Susan Collins.
Thank you also again for coming tonight, for being engaged in this process. Being engaged and informed is imperative. I also decided to run because of the homelessness crisis. And what fueled me was that when I turned to our city for answers, I wasn't really given any. And when I would ask repeatedly, what about me? You know, special interests have plenty of people talking about them and covering for them. The homeless now have a lot of advocates for them, and that's great. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of us whose kids just want to go to the park? What about the rest of us that just want to take our dogs for a walk without having, things thrown at us or stepping in feces? Who has my back? Who has your back? There's a huge segment in the middle that has been completely overlooked. And when I went for answers, I didn't get any. So what I want to do is I want to make certain that you have representation, that I have representation, that the community has representation, and that representation is indicative of your views. I'm not running to implement my vision for your neighborhood or your community. I'm running because I want to ensure that we create a pathway for you to have non-biased information delivered to you in a way that you actually receive, and that you can then convey your interests back to the council office, and my vote will always mirror your views, not my opinion. That's not my job. My job is to represent the communities that trust me and elect me. Thank you.
Thank you. And how about a big round of applause for the candidates who shared their time today? Nithya Raman, David Rue, Sarah Kate Levy, and Susan Collins. Thank you to our hosts here, John Marshall High School, especially the students who asked questions, and the crew who did this whole setup and the AV and everything. Thanks to those student crews. Thank you to Penny and Jay, our League of Women Voters timers. Los Feliz neighborhood councils, 8 neighborhood councils participated: the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council, Hollywood Hills West, Greater Wilshire, Greater Toluca Lake, Central Hollywood, Bel Air, Beverly Crest, and Silver Lake. Also the Los Feliz Improvement Association and Friends of LA River. I'm Libby Dankman with NPR station KPCC. Thank you and good night.